Hi everyone, health tip this week. We're going to be taking a pretty big topic and it might take a little while to go through it, but we're going to be talking about dairy products. The topic is dairy, do or death. So some people think dairy is the greatest thing in the world, some people think it's the worst thing in the world, and it's probably both. And I'll try to kind of explain a little bit about how we can look at it and some ways we can approach it. So there is some schools of thought that say, after an animal has weaned from the breast, there's no other animal on the planet that keeps drinking milk after it's stopped breastfeeding, basically. But we decide to go drink cow's milk for some reason. So there are some people who think that there are some cultures in certain parts of the world, they have them out in the wild and they use them as a good source of making yogurts or fermented foods, or they use the milk itself as sustenance, and some of those cultures actually live quite a long time and they're very healthy. Certain areas in Italy and Sardinia, they have their goats and their sheep and stuff like that, these kind of things up in the mountains, and they live quite a long time. So we're going to look at, what are the different factors and how all this can kind of be put together. So if we're going to look at the standard cow's milk right here, there's going to be a lot of different things that they do to it. So most of the milk that you're getting in stores is, we call it factory farmed milk from cows that are, fed the wrong diet. Usually it's all grains. Cows should actually be eating grass. But if they feed them grains, they load them up with antibiotics, it makes them fatter, they produce more milk. So they're feeding them genetically modified grains, and that plumps them up, it keeps them producing milk, and it keeps them fat and that kind of thing. So there's a lot of different things they do to cows, and some pretty yucky things to keep them producing milk and stuff like that. So, but the milk itself, the baseline milk that's going through this process is a bit of a problem, but I'll talk about how that can be different and how we can look at it differently. So what they usually do, they take milk, so the milk that you get from the regular, cows on the store and all that, from the stores, for the most part, we're going to call it factory farmed cow's milk. That's going to be pasteurized, which means they heat it up to a really high temperature to kill all the bad bacteria to make it safe for us to consume. But pasteurizing actually destroys the enzymes and it destroys the life of food, basically. It's just like overcooking things, or when you take the live enzymes that are inside foods and you cook them, the enzymes die. So instead of those enzymes being useful and helpful for you, your body has to produce more enzymes to kind of digest it and break it down, so it actually takes energy away from your body as opposed to giving it to you. So pasteurizing foods, unfortunately, it kind of has to be done for the health system and all that stuff, and I get it, but it kind of destroys the living quality of the food. So there's a whole movement to try to get raw cow's milk, unpasteurized cow's milk and stuff like that, and there's a bit of controversy about that, and they're trying to get more of that done, and if you kind of know a farmer and stuff, you can kind of get it. So that's one thing, if you can get more to that, because those cows, if they're eating the proper diet, which would be grasses, they're actually producing grass-fed milk. Is actually producing something called CLA, which is present in breast milk, but most other sources you can only get it from animals that are eating grass. And it's a very, very important fatty acid for our body and our health. And so if you could get raw, unpasteurized, and get it organic, and the organic, why is that important? Well, that way we're eliminating the hormones, pesticides, and all the other things that may be sprayed on the foods that they're eating, or the hormones that they hypothetically would be putting in the regular milk that you get in the stores. So organic is a bit of a bonus because it's going to be a cleaner source with less pesticides and less hormone residues, and that's good. If you get it raw, then you're actually getting a live food, and then grass-fed is the big bonus. So there is a company in Ontario, we call it Rolling Meadows, and they produce grass-fed milk, so you can get it in the stores. And of course I would tell you, if you see my other videos about fat, you would actually get the highest fat one possible. When you try to get low fat or no fat milk, that's even worse. Okay, so you want to get the fats because that's where you're getting more of the fat-soluble vitamins, all that kind of stuff, and it's just a more natural thing for your body, and you need those fat-soluble vitamins like A, D, E, and K. And if the cows are grass-fed, they're actually producing a special vitamin K, vitamin K2, which is very important for our health and how our body deposits calcium in the tissues when we take it in. And it's important that the calcium actually goes where it's supposed to, and vitamin K2 is fundamental for that to happen. So when you get grass-fed butter, grass-fed milks, or grass-fed cheeses, and yogurts, you should be getting that extra K2, which is a very good bonus. So having all this, cow's milk itself has been linked to a lot of different problems. Things like diabetes, acne, allergies, autism, schizophrenia, excessive mucus production. And some people say that like half of the allergies in the world are caused by cow's milk, basically. And that's probably true if you're drinking the generic cow's milk. But there's a whole big difference in the type of protein that's in cow's milk. So most of the cow's milk in North America has something in it called A1 beta casein, which is a specific protein inside the milk. And thousands of years ago, a little mutation happened in this protein. One amino acid got switched, and all of a sudden it made A2 milk into A1 milk. And most of the cows in North America are all this A1 beta casein. And when that happened, there's a little branch off this protein. When it gets digested, there's a 7-chain peptide, they call it, that comes into our blood, and it causes all of these, or it has a link to all of these problems. So all of the problems with dairy in general could probably be traced back to the fact that we're drinking A1 beta casein, not necessarily the fact that milk itself is bad. So if you're able to get A2 beta casein milk, that could be actually quite beneficial for you, but in Canada you really can't get it. There's a guy in the United States named Jordan Rubin who actually reverse engineered a bunch of cows on his 3,000-acre farm, and he made a company called Beyond Organic, saying that organic is great, but we want to go beyond that and actually get the real healthy cow's milk sort of thing. So he actually has raw cow's milk, he makes raw cheeses and raw yogurts and stuff from this A2 beta casein milk, which doesn't cause any of this stuff and actually can be very, very healthy. And if the cows are eating grass, they're getting a good diversity in their bacteria, and the diversity in our gut bacteria is extremely important for our health, and you get a lot of that. So you get raw cheeses made from these different cows and things like that. You're probably getting a lot of really good diverse bacteria, and a product that doesn't have the A1, it's got the A2 beta casein, which is fine, and it doesn't cause any of these reactions. So that's actually a really big bonus. So our option here in Canada pretty much is that if you go with sheep or goat's milk, those are all still A2 beta casein, and that's a pretty common thing. A lot of women who are bottle feeding their babies, very often if their babies have a bunch of allergies and they're getting all mucusy and stuff because they're feeding them cow's milk, when they switch over to sheep or goats, it's actually much less allergenic for the kids, and they tolerate it a lot better, and a lot of adults do as well. So if you can kind of make your switch to kind of, if you want to drink milk, obviously you're going to be pushing more towards this. And so if you can get organic, raw, grass-fed goat's cheese and sheep cheese and those kind of things, they taste differently, and it takes a bit of time to get accustomed to it. But if you can find that stuff, and this stuff actually can be found, I've looked for it. You kind of have to look around. You can get some European cheeses. Apparently in France too, they even have the A2, for the majority they have the A2 beta casein, so you know that whole French paradox again, eating all these fatty foods, well maybe they're eating the right type of milk, they're putting the right type of milk through that process sort of thing. The other thing is the whole grass-fed movement that's coming into favor now because people are starting to realize how beneficial that is. So the Rolling Meadows company actually has grass-fed butter, which I've mentioned before, and that's the butter that we use. And some of the trends nowadays are actually to put grass-fed butter into your coffee. There's something called bulletproof coffee, and they're using that as the quote-unquote the creamer. So they're using grass-fed butter. They're putting in another thing called the medium-chain triglycerides, which is another saturated fat from coconut palm oil or just coconut oil, depending on how they use it. And that is very, very beneficial, and it's great for your brain, great for mental clarity, great for fat burning, and they're putting that inside their coffees, and that's kind of a big trend right now. So basically that's the overall picture. So if you're not going to do any dairy at all, then your milks are obviously going to be like almond milk, and the best one is probably be coconut milk, obviously if you can get the good quality coconut milk. But then there's all sorts of other milks, hemp and all that kind of stuff. Bit of a controversy about how much of the nuts are actually in those milks, so if you can make it yourself, it takes time. You have to have the good blender, and you have to have the straining and the cheesecloth to kind of sift it through and all that stuff. So that's a bit of an issue too, but usually if you can get coconut milk in the cans with the high-fat coconut milk, the full-fat ones, those are some of the best ones you can be using. But if you're going for dairy, that's how you can kind of look at that whole big scenario. So that's your health tip for this week. It was a long one, a little complicated, but it's a pretty big issue. So if this video was helpful, please share it on your Facebook page or share the email that you got this in, and we'll see you next week. Bye.